Hey everybody, Jonathan Gunlock here with the Grace SF Project. I wanted to just offer a few words of encouragement as we embark on the first week of the season of Lent. Lent is traditionally a time of introspection and re-examining our lives for about 6 weeks as we approach Easter. In fact, in many parts of the world, many parts of the church worldwide, folks are required to fast. They're actually required to give something up, like meat, for instance, to help open up that spiritual sensitivity. But for most of us, a Lenten fast or a Lenten practice is more of an optional thing, and it can be really good. And these fasts or practices can also be not so good. And so I wanted to talk about that just for a minute. I personally have a sort of love-hate relationship with fasting and self-denial. I've experienced both the openness and the spiritual sensitivity that these practices can bring. And I've also been burned out, even severely burned out at times, by modes of spiritual life that are based primarily in self-denial. I spent more than a few years, now this is a long time ago, more than a few years among a religious group that seemed to think that a healthy spiritual life was only defined by what you said no to. And this actually seemed to energize these people. It only depleted me. And so this year, that's got me thinking a bit about something I'm calling the middle way of Lent. The middle way of Lent. Now, middle way can mean a bunch of different things in different spiritual contexts, but here I'm actually borrowing from Eastern religious practice because I think it can be helpful. The middle way of Lent would encourage us to avoid practices or fasts that become a focus unto themselves. Avoid the things that will take up all your energy just to complete the practice. And instead, look for practices or ways of being, ways of living during these weeks of Lent that open up time and space in your life to experience God, to be able to hear your own heart speak, and to be able to connect better, connect more deeply with others. Now, this is different for different people. There's no one-size-fits-all approach here, but the goal is to find a practice that helps you quiet and open up space in your life and soul. Now, one of my teachers, David Whyte, says that the first step to beginning any journey of discernment or real introspection is to first stop the conversation that you're already having. You first have to stop the existing conversation that is filling and occupying all of your soul's activity. Now, this could be any type of internal wrestling you have going on over a vocational challenge, for instance, or a relational tug of war going on in your life. It could be a deeply internal wrestling that you're having with God, or a way maybe you feel let down by God or let down by life. But the point here is that before we can begin and get on with the work of listening and true introspection, we intentionally have to put an end, to press a definite pause to the noise of our existing internal conversations. David illustrates this so well in a poem that he calls Sometimes. Sometimes, if you move carefully through the forest, breathing like the ones in the old stories, who could cross a shimmering bed of leaves without a sound, you come to a place whose only task is to trouble you with tiny but frightening requests, conceived out of nowhere, but in this place beginning to lead everywhere. Request to stop what you are doing right now, and to stop what you are becoming while you do it. Questions that can make or unmake a life. Questions that have patiently waited for you. Questions that have no right to go away. Questions that have patiently waited for you. Questions that have no right to go away. Now, there are questions waiting for each of us during this season of Lent, but we won't be able to hear them without quieting the internal conversation that is taking up the better portion of our souls. And we won't be able to hear them by taking up a new Lenten fast or a new discipline that only introduces new noise or a new struggle or a new perceived way of earning a holiness badge into our lives. We just won't be able to do it. It's worth noting that Even Jesus was always seeking to open up internal space in his soul. You see it over and over again. He ministers to a crowd. He teaches and he heals, and then he leaves. I mean, Jesus is leaving the crowds over and over again, and he's leaving them for quiet and peace. He never stays with the crowd for very long. It's as if he knows that he will not be able to hear God, and he will not be able to hear his own heart if he stays in the conversation of the crowd for too long. And he's like Jesus. Jesus, the Holy Son of God, desperately needed to carve out space and to pray, and space to hear his own heart speak and to seek God. So the middle way of Lent, it'll mean different things for different ones of us, but the goal is to find that practice or to find that way of living for just these few weeks that opens up space in your life to experience more of God, to hear your own heart speak, and to connect more deeply with others. In my recent family life, we've tried things that have worked and that didn't work. A few years ago, we tried to go vegetarian during Lent. Did not work. Did not work for us at all. It just sucked up all our energy just to maintain that practice. But we've tried things that are more transformative and interesting and maybe a little weird. For a few years, we went without artificial light at night during Lent. And we're in fact doing that again this season of Lent. No artificial light at night in our house, which means if you come by our house in the evening after dark, it is quite dark. And there are a ton of candles burning in our house. It is not easy, but it causes us to simplify and slow down and to pay attention in a different way. We've got different kinds of activities. We have different kinds of conversations than we would have. And we have to be okay sometimes with waiting until morning or waiting until sunrise to get certain things done, which means you look forward to the sun rising. I mean, imagine that. Looking forward to the sunrise, just like all our ancestors would have forever. Looking forward to the sun rising, appreciating the sunrise. But we're not used to that because we're so used to just flicking on a light. So friends, my prayer and my encouragement for us is to go gently with ourselves this Lenten season, to go gently, to look for practices or ways of being in the world that open up space, that draw us closer to God and to each other, that draw us deeper into our own hearts. And as we open up that space, don't be surprised if some compelling and beautiful questions begin to emerge.